Good morning, I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. The Victorian government is on the verge of doing a UK, subbing in a new leader after the party returned disastrous polling results. But why is Jacinta Allen so very unpopular? I thought I would start off today by giving you a little peek behind the veil of political journalism right now. So just as an example, Budget Day is a little bit like journalist Christmas. You get a bunch of promises, little presents that you get to unpick and unpack and unwrap, while politicians have to avail themselves to your questions, like parents who are held hostage around the Christmas tree. An election is like journalist run club, especially for those who follow the Prime Minister on his or her campaign trail. A shout out to the TV cameramen and women, that is a feat of physical endurance. It's a bit of a journey, but at least the pollies are quite chatty. I think a leadership spill is a little bit like journalist Halloween. You're a little bit too close to the dead, but there's a sweet treat of the outcome just around the corner, a sugar rush that can be a little bit high. We'll find out what's going on in Victoria in just a minute. But before we do that, let's find out what's been happening while you were sleeping. It's Tuesday, July 28. A baby remains missing off the coast of South Australia this morning after the bodies of a mother and a toddler were pulled from the ocean yesterday. Emergency services rushed to the state's far south coastal town of Port MacDonnell around 11 a.m. yesterday after they were alerted to a vehicle in the car park at the top of cliffs that had been left with its engine running. Officers then spotted the bodies of an adult and a small child in the water. They've been identified as a 36-year-old woman from Compton near Mount Gambier and her toddler. Crews continue to search for the missing baby, who's yet to turn 1, until they ran out of light. The search will resume this morning. Police are now trying to piece together the events that led to the woman to end up at Cape Northumberland, asking for anyone who saw the car, a white Isuzu MUX, with the registration S592BJ, to contact Crime Stoppers. Pauline Hanson's appeal against a finding that a tweet she sent in 2022 was racist has been upheld by the full court of the federal court. Senator Hanson, who's now considering a High Court appeal, posted the tweet to Deputy Greens leader Marine Faruqi in the wake of the death of Queen Elizabeth, telling her to piss off back to Pakistan. In the federal court decision handed down in 2024, Justice Angus Stewart ruled that the post was seriously offensive and a strong form of racism. Senator Hanson's appeal against the finding was dismissed yesterday. Senator Faruqi spoke to the media outside, saying hate speech is not free speech, and the federal court has reaffirmed that today. A warning that this next story contains details of alleged sexual assault. UK rapper Young Philly, who is facing 6 charges of violently raping a fan in Perth in 2024, has denied slapping and choking the alleged victim as well as impeding her breathing, but does admit to biting her. The 30-year-old told the court yesterday that he did bite the woman on the face, neck and breasts, calling them love bites. Pictures of the woman's face and neck showing significant bruising and bite marks were shown to the court. He denies she repeatedly said no and cried during the ordeal, saying there was kissing in between the bites and that she made noises like she was enjoying the experience but refused to recreate those noises in court. Yesterday's Oz Alert test was broadcast from 94% of the targeted cell towers nationwide, exceeding the National Emergency Management Agency's target. The exact number of us who actually received the 10-second siren and screen alert is not yet clear. Mobile phones that were out of service range or had out-of-date software didn't receive it. Emergency Management Minister Kristy McBain says the test was a success, but not to worry if you didn't get it, because it's not the only thing emergency services use during a natural disaster to let you know what's happening. The Oz Alert system will go live in October. The Australian poultry industry is on alert after 7 greater crested terns were found in South Australia's southeast, sparking fears of mass local transmission of the deadly H5 bird flu. Australia currently has 20 confirmed cases across SA, Western Australia, New South Wales and Queensland. Only one so far has been discovered in an Australian native non-migratory bird species. The greater crested terns have been sent to the Australian Centre for Disease Preparedness in Geelong for final testing. Iran claims to still be in control of the Strait of Hormuz, saying they're not seeking to resume peace talks with the United States. The statement comes after President Donald Trump halted a 2-week bombing campaign that his military leaders told him had run its course after 13 successive nights of intense bombing that provoked Tehran to fire on US bases. Iran said it would pause its own attacks for as long as the US does. On Sunday, the US ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, said Trump had paused the campaign to allow room for negotiations, but the spokesperson for Iran's foreign ministry, Esmail Baghaei, said in a televised press conference that Iran has not asked to resume peace talks. A Glasgow Commonwealth Games update, and artistic gymnast Kate McDonald has won the Aussie women's gymnastics team another gold, taking out the uneven bars in the individual apparatus finals. In the men's, James Hardy nabbed 2 bronze on the floor and on the rings. Brenna Keene's weightlifting campaign is sadly over after she had to pull out with an ankle injury, and swimmer Molly O'Callaghan has decided not to enter the 50-metre backstroke as she continues to carefully manage her spinal fractures. The Australian women's 3x3 wheelchair basketball team, the Wombats, have beaten Canada 12-10. One of the stars of the team, Georgia Murray Cook, has a very famous dad, but I'll let you work out who he is because it's not about him during the Commonwealth Games, it's about her, but he is there supporting her. This one's for anyone who sat up with mum and dad and watched the TV show The Goodies in the 70s and 80s. Star Bill Oddie, who was one of the Goodies trio alongside Tim Brooke-Taylor and Graham Garden, has passed away aged 85. After his comedy career, he went on to host wildlife programs for the BBC, his agent saying he spent his later years protesting, lobbying and campaigning for environmental protections, adding his massive contribution to conservation won't be forgotten. Those are your top stories today. Next, it seems Jacinta Allen's time as Victoria's Premier might be over. But what's really going on? We're now just a few months away from an election in Victoria. Voters will head to the polls in late November to decide who should run the show. But those who are currently in charge, Victorian Labor, are far from safe. A Redbridge and Accent research poll for the Financial Review, which was conducted late last month, showed support for Labor in Victoria was now on equal footing with the Liberal National Coalition, tied on 26%. But they both lagged behind a surge in support for Pauline Hanson's One Nation, who scored 27% of the primary vote support. Now, a new MRP mega poll of just over 9,000 voters shows that One Nation would be almost strong enough to form government if that election was held right now in Victoria. The model uses data from May to July this year, putting One Nation up 3 points to 30% support, Labor on 26% and the LNP on 21%. So what has gone so wrong for the Australian Labor Party in Victoria? There is one very obvious thing happening right now that is in part to blame for Labor and by extension Jacinta Allen's unpopularity. If you don't live in Victoria, you might not know about the Big Build. Now, the Big Build is a huge infrastructure project which aims to deliver more than 180 major road and rail projects across Victoria with an investment of over $100 billion. Its purpose is to reduce the state's congestion problems, upgrade public transport infrastructure, and create a whole lot of local jobs. There's a new metro tunnel and underground train line, the removal of over 100 level crossings, upgrading roads, and the regional and suburban rail. It employs tens of thousands of people, with a set percentage of those going to trainees and apprentices to address the tradie shortage. It also aims to attract more women into the construction industry. Now, all of that sounds really positive, right? But as we all know, where there is a lot of money to be made, there will always be people who are less than above board who will try to get their hands on it.
Any criminal behaviour that includes corruption and extortion, as I've said before, should immediately be reported to Victoria Police.
That's Premier Jacinta Allen. Both police and industry insiders have confirmed that underworld figures and bikie-linked subcontractors have been given lucrative contracts to work on these massive taxpayer-funded projects. Police have already laid more than 90 criminal charges over the claims made about the behind the scenes of these construction jobs, with the Labor Hire Authority cancelling the construction licences of 164 firms. But there's only so much police can do when it comes to massive government contracts. Some contractors also made claims that they had faced intimidation, extortion and standover tactics from the CFMEU, the union which was eventually placed into administration. There is some evidence that the CFMEU were allegedly given vetting powers by the Victorian government as to who did and who did not get these contracts. When you add inflation and kickbacks, it's thought to have cost the Victorian taxpayer billions of dollars extra. But is this the only reason Jacinta Allen's head is on the chopping block right now? A cross-factional group of Labor MPs have approached Allen to ask her to resign, saying she's lost the support of the Labor caucus, with her deputy Ben Carroll confirming he'll nominate for the leadership in her place. But Allen has refused to step down, vowing to contest any leadership ballot. Judith Brett is an emeritus professor of politics at La Trobe University in Melbourne. Judy, welcome to the Solo Bureau.
Thank you for having me.
Judy, can you explain to us why Jacinta Allen has become so unpopular with voters in Victoria? What is it about her leadership that has put her at the bottom of all the polls that we've seen of late? A Demos poll, in fact, made her the least favourite premier of all the premiers across the country. What's happening under Jacinta Allen's leadership?
There's probably a number of things happening, but I think the big story is the costs of the big build and the continuing revelations of allegations links between the big build and organised crime, doubts about the CFMEU and whether it's being reformed, and the fact that she was Transport Minister when much of this is happening. The Age has been running a series of sustained investigations, and there's been sort of new articles, almost every day for the last little while, or certainly regularly, about the cost blowouts and what are the possible causes of this. And then I think the fact that she has refused to hold a royal commission on this has really damaged her leadership.
How much do you think is attributed to that, and how much is voter fatigue with Labor? Because she's looking for a fourth term for Labor here, and do we feel like Victorians have just had enough, considering things that aren't fully in their control, cost of living, for example? Do you think that they've just had enough of Labor and they want to change?
I don't think it's just that they want to change. I think they think there should be a change because there looks like there's been mismanagement on some of these big projects under Labor. And hence, if we want to find out what went on, and because Labor's refusing to do anything about it, then we need a change of government. I think any government, there's a series of mistakes or mishaps that sort of pile up and make people think, well, they're not doing such a good job, we should give the other side a go.
What, of course, is really interesting in the polling that's happening around this right now is that instead of it just then seesawing in the coalition's favour, we're seeing One Nation garner quite a bit of support amongst Victorian voters, at least as far as the polls are telling us right now. So are we looking at, in Victoria, the end of the sort of two major party system, with One Nation becoming an actual real contender to form government here?
Well, I think we have to wait and see what happens at the election. I think it's a reasonably fast-moving picture. It's quite hard, I think, to quite get a grasp of what's going on with the One Nation vote, whether it's just a parked protest vote, people when they come to vote and think about who has the experience to run a government, whether they'd still vote for it. We don't know yet whether these are real switches of party identification or whether they're temporary protests.
So what you're saying is in comparison to, say, in the federal election where we saw a lot of people shift towards Greens and Teals because they were disillusioned with the ALP or with the LNP, that this might just be people sending a warning shot that we will vote for One Nation if there is no better alternative, so hurry up and shape up? Is that the idea?
It's hard to know how much effort people put into these to this. They haven't even got any candidates yet. So it's like saying we think both the major parties are on the nose and One Nation's in some ways the only other kid on the block, or whether it's an attraction to One Nation's policies, whether or not people, the people who are voting for One Nation are really dissatisfied with the immigration policies and are opposed to multiculturalism, or whether it is, as you say, a warning shot. I think it's a little early to tell.
Pauline Hanson has made some of her sort of broader party politics a little bit clearer in recent times, but is there anyone within Victoria who is telling it from a Victorian perspective on the part of One Nation?
Do you know who the leader is in Victoria?
I do not.
No, neither do I. Is there one?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, very much it's a one-person show. It's part of why I think it's doing well, because there's all sorts of ways in which Pauline Hanson is very attractive to a lot of people. She says what she thinks. She comes over as authentic. She's been saying the same things for the last 30 years. She appears to be different from the slick and professional politicians. So that's a strength, but it's also a vulnerability, because she wants to be the source of policy. There's no mechanisms within the party for sorting out policy differences. How are they going to deal with policy differences if they are in the parliament? Are they all going to vote together? Are they going to have a conscience vote on issues? Which issues? When One Nation did very well in the Queensland election, I think in 1998, it got 11 members elected. The whole thing fell apart really quickly because there was no organisational infrastructure for the party. So I think that's a real weakness. I mean, she's her strength, but the party's strength, but she's also, in a way, the whole thing. So there's no pre-selected candidates yet, and there doesn't appear to be much of an organisation.
Judy, is this disillusionment with Labor within Victoria, and I mean it is happening more broadly, but the disillusion in Victoria, is this a Jacinta problem? Will leadership change make a difference, you think?
Look, I think there's a hangover of COVID and the fact that we were locked down by a Labor government under Daniel Andrews. And I think there's quite a lot of people who still resent Labor because of that. Will it make a difference? It may save some furniture. I think if there is a change of leadership, that the new leader, and if it's Ben Carroll, needs to call a Royal Commission. I think that will make a difference. It may not be enough of a difference for them to retain government, but it may stem the losses.
From an outsider's perspective, I've had people ask whether the loss of the Commonwealth Games and the fact that Glasgow is happening right now and that Victorian taxpayers know that they are contributing significantly to those games, do you think that's made a difference?
Well, it could have. It's another thing that people can hold against them. You're probably right about that. And I think particularly because the regions were offered sporting and housing infrastructure, which then, of course, didn't happen. So they would have, there's a sense of sort of grievance of opportunities that were held up and then taken away. So that's probably another contributing factor.
Well, Judy, I guess we'll watch this space and see what happens in the next 24 to 48 hours. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise with us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks then. Bye.
As I mentioned previously, Jacinta Allen has decided to fight for her job, reportedly with the backing of her senior ministers. If she holds the line this morning, the ABC is reporting that a spill motion is likely to be moved in today's Labor caucus meeting at around 10 a.m. But it won't be over quickly. Depending on how the chips fall today, it could be weeks before the leadership of Victoria's Labor Party is settled. And with an interim leader likely in place during this process and an election looming, the momentum is working very much against them at a time where the stakes couldn't be much higher. Or Jacinta Allen could throw it all in if the spill motion is moved a little bit too confidently by her party members. Or she could win the spill motion and we're back to business as usual. Thanks for taking a moment to wrap your head around what's going down in Victoria this week. We'll keep you posted as this story unfolds. Okay, it's time to clock off for today. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, wherever you may be. I'll check in with you tomorrow. Bye.